Aspen has many cultural icons from its early days, but few are as enduring or as frivolous as the Crystal Palace. If laughter is a cure, then the Crystal Palace has been a sanitarium for thousands who have guffawed the nights away amid the wit and humor of vaudeville, Aspen style.
I'm the son of a bush, and so is my brother. My dad's a hero, he's no wimp, and you don't want to mess with mother.
Here, among gaudy chandeliers, vintage autos, and stained glass, Mead Metcalf has entertained Aspen and the world.
He was the consummate performer and so funny. His timing. He had the best comic timing of anyone that I know as a performer and make anything funny.
In the afternoon, I got out my BB gun and shoot a rollerblader in the park. Bounce one off their kneecaps. When they fall, they often leave a mark on the pavement.
Schooled in classical music, Metcalf soon broke from the traditional mold and became a jazz impresario.
I took classical piano music for about 15 years, and that's all I did was play classical music. And I got to junior high school and I realized nobody liked me. And so I started playing jazz, and all of a sudden I had all the friends. Everybody thought I was great. And when I went to college at Dartmouth, I played the piano all the time I was at Dartmouth. After graduating from Dartmouth, I went in as a draftee in the Army. I did a show for the Special Services gals there, and they thought I was good enough that they picked up the phone, and all of a sudden I was transferred to Berchtesgaden, where Hitler's Eagle's Nest was. And I spent a year and a half of my Army career in Berchtesgaden doing shows at the General Walker Hotel.
Mead Metcalf was 25 when he came to Aspen in 1957, and he quickly established himself as a performer.
I ski bummed and played the piano first for Mario's. It was an Italian opera singing place, Mario's, and then I moved over to the Hotel Jerome and played and sang encores when people finished dinner. And that summer I opened the Crystal Palace on the 1st of July of '57. I started out singing solos at the piano, and then I hired a gal named Joan Higby who washed dishes in the kitchen, and she would take her dirty apron off and come out and sing a couple of songs with me at the piano, and then put her dirty apron back on and go back and wash dishes. And Joni and I got married in '64.
The decor of the Crystal Palace was conducive to a musical review.
There's really something about going into that building, the way that it was decorated, and being in that environment for all those hours, and having your waiter turn into a singer in about an hour, and some people didn't even know, oh my gosh, you're in the show?
When combined with clever musical satire, the Crystal Palace created a unique Aspen tradition that became one of the town's most popular nighttime venues.
In the heyday, there were 400 people in that restaurant a night. 400 people. There was nothing else like it anywhere.
I mean, the Crystal Palace was virtually a destination restaurant in itself. It was known throughout the world. It had that kind of cachet.
While it was Mead's showmanship that set a witty, urbane tone for the Crystal Palace, plenty of local talent gave life to the review.
Let the whole world look askance, because next we're invading France!
His hiring process and the people that he had on staff has evolved. In the beginning, he would find ski bums and teach them how to wait tables, maybe teach them how to sing a song or two, or he'd find, this rare talented person that could bartend and sing.
He did hire a guy, he was a stewardess on the Aspen Airways plane, who did a really funny rap about putting your seatbelt on and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The guy couldn't sing, but he was funny on the airplane. He, I think, hired him on the spot and said, I've got a job for you if you want it.
Throughout the process and the evolution of the palace towards the end of the years, the last, I would say, 20 years or so, he was getting performers and training them to wait tables rather than waiters and training them to perform.
People from all over the United States would come to work here, and mainly because they could make a living as an actor and be able to buy homes in our hometown.
Mead gradually bought units for his employees to live in. I would not be a homeowner in Aspen if I hadn't gotten to live in employee housing at a great rate for many years.
I'm so happy with what I got!
Nobody else was buying housing for their employees in those days.
This pool of talented local performers enriched many of Aspen's community theatrical and musical productions.
It's the reason why there's great community theater here, there are great community choirs here.
The assortment of talent that he brought into this community fed other organizations like Theater Aspen or Aspen Community Theater.
Pretty much every year, Aspen Community Theater has a Crystal Palace performer in their show, whether it's 1 or 3 or 4.
Several Crystal Palace veterans use their Aspen experience as a springboard to bigger things.
Frank Ruivavar came to me and worked for me for 2 years, and he went on to Broadway and appeared as the lead singer in several musicals in Broadway. Another one is Beth Malone, who worked for me for 4 or 5 years, and she's gone on to Broadway and been in several big musicals on Broadway.
From the beginning, Mead took a liberal approach to namesakes and musical credits.
It started out to be all Broadway shows. Nobody was writing for me at that time. Well, in about the time I got married to Joni, a couple from New York was sitting in the audience one night, and Leslie Perrin called us over and she said, "I wrote 3 of those songs you did tonight, and you've never paid royalties for the songs."
Mead soon made good on the creative talents of writers and nurtured several careers as a result.
There's a woman, Suzanne Bear, who lives down in Las Vegas, I think, but she has performing there. Mead saw her perform, loved her song, went to her apartment. They sat down, he said, "I want your material, here's a check." It was the first time she'd ever sold a song, and it gave her the encouragement to continue to write. And she wrote material for us for years. You know, so there's another career and a life that he changed just by saying, "I like that, that's, I want that."
Throughout the years, Mead kept his shows vital by changing acts according to the times and the events of the day.
We had a number about every president all the way up the ladder, and they were fun. People would just, start laughing at every one of them.
My dad had a problem with broccoli, and he no longer smokes it.
Well, back on the dead.
Rednecks and neocons are surely overjoyed.
Look how they stand by me, although they're unemployed.
They're sure to bring back jobs,
But I can't tell them when to dismount.
rub your eyes again.
Mead hired performers and directors, but his overarching concept for the Crystal Palace never wavered.
He really had a vision for what he wanted and saw to it that that's how things happened. I don't think he could ever hear, "Oh, this isn't going to work." If he thought it was going to work, he made it work, and whether he was right or wrong, it happened and it worked. And his vision from the very beginning was what we had 50 years later.
Aspen changed dramatically during the 50 years since the Crystal Palace first opened at the corner of Hyman and Monarch, and Mead came to miss the quiet pace of the small town he first saw as a 25-year-old. He sold the Crystal Palace in 2007 and moved across the Elk Range to Crested Butte. There will always be a place for Mead, if not at the piano in the Crystal Palace, then certainly in the hearts and the minds of the many people he touched with his shows and graced with the precious gift of laughter. He is remembered today not only as one of Aspen's most flamboyant entrepreneurs, but as a man with just a little spot of peanut butter on his chin.
Let me set things straight from the old tip-top so that you know where we stand. I'm a very big man in a very big firm with an awful lot of power in my hand. And I run my ship with a good tight grip, and I played it every game worth winning. Then this goddamn thing comes along and bing, but I guess I better start at the beginning. It was just a day like a normal day. In fact, I felt real swell. I'd firmed a deal with another big wheel, and the meeting of the board went well. At 6:15, I went home to Jean. She met me with a nice cool gin. Then she looked real odd and said, "Oh my God, there's a lump of peanut butter on your chin." Well, we figured it out, it had been that way from the time I went into work that day, and I'd wheeled and dealed and spieled all day with a lump of peanut butter on my chin. Well, I stayed at home for a day or two, just to let things simmer down. Then I figured out what a jerk I'd been, and I hurried to get back downtown. Not a word was said, and I forged ahead till my right-hand man came in. And there he stood with a face like wood, and a lump of peanut butter on his chin. Well, Jean and I had a good long laugh when I got back home that night. Funny thing what a guy can do just because everybody thinks he's right. And I was laughing still on my way to work, but I stopped when I walked in, because every jerk from the chairman to the clerk had a lump of peanut butter on his chin. Not one bare chin in the whole damn group, and they looked at me as I stumbled through, and every look said, "Why don't you have a lump of peanut butter on your chin?" For the longest day in my whole career, I sat in my lonely place, and every soul who came through that door had that stupid-looking substance on his face. And at last I knew what I had to do, and I locked the door securely from within, and with these same hands that have forged new lands, I put a lump of peanut butter on my chin. Now, our competitors heard as competitors will. Before the day was through, all their big execs had their big brown specs, and the chairman of the board had too. It hit the crowd like a mushroom cloud. The populace was all pulled in, and they each confessed that they felt undressed without a lump of peanut butter on their chin. It's a silly song, isn't it? Well, I slammed the door and I left that place, and I hurried home at a madman's pace, and there stood Jean with a tear-stained face. Well, you know the rest of the sordid mess, the unprecedented list of facts, of the Skippy jars and the beauty bars with additional cosmetics tax. The songs they played and the laws they made, where an officer can haul you in if you show your face in a public place without a lump of peanut butter on your chin. Well, I have to speak from within my soul. You've got to know the truth, that this whole affair is a big, ungodly, rotten, misbegotten goof. And I don't care who you've spoken to or where in the world you've been. On my bended knees, I must beg you, please, don't put a lump of peanut butter on your chin.